Good afternoon. Welcome to our class. This is American Government, POL 166. And there's a reason I'm recording this lecture. I'm recording this lecture because actually I showed up for class on Monday, not realizing that there was no class. So I was quite disappointed that there was no class on Monday. It was a holiday. I hope you enjoyed your holiday. And so I realized that the class is rescheduled for this Friday. Unfortunately, I have a funeral on Friday that I have to attend, and so I will not be able to attend class on Friday. So this is your Friday class. So I sure hope you enjoy it. Now, this is going to be a long lecture, I hope. And this is how I'm going to divide it up. One, I'm going to do a little review of what we did the last class. Secondly, I'm going to do chapters 1 and 2 of your text. And then on Monday, which is when we will resume for class again, hopefully there'll be no more holidays on a Monday. I think there may be one more, but hopefully I will do 2 more chapters, chapters 3 and 4. Hopefully I plan to get to on Monday. So by now you should be up to chapter 4 in your text. In addition to the book review, which, as I said, you were supposed to be working on so that you can get that out of the way and at the same time read your text. So, the first thing I'm going to do is to bring up the lecture that I wanted to review. So that's going to be next. I'm going to record. I just did a long lecture and it was on pause. So I'm going to redo everything that I just said. Hopefully, this will work. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to review what we have done so far very quickly. I talked about a system. That politics is a system. So if we want to understand the American government, we have to understand it's a political system. A system is something that has a broader environment, an internal environment, an external environment. The last class we went in details about the internal environment that impacts politics and that politics impacts. Today I want to just go very quickly. I just did a detailed explanation, which I'll just have to do again, of the external environment and how that affects the American political system. And given the fact that systems are open, meaning the inside affects the outside affects the inside. So we want to see how that works. We talked about this before. This is what the political system looks like. At the heart of the political system is the government that makes decisions. Those decisions are fed by demands, meaning either the people, in our case, we have a democracy, the people make demands. If you're alive this weekend, you would see those marches are an attempt to make a demand. The no king marches, that's a demand. Okay, that's a demand, a saying to our president, you will not do what you're doing now. And so let's see how that impacts decisions. The whole idea is to show up in power to make decisions. And of course, we now have to wait to see what kind of impact it does. Support is how those decisions are enforced. Support takes the form, for example, of taxes that help fund the decisions. It takes the form of people and civil servants, soldiers, whatever. support takes the form also of patriotic support. You go gung with the president, whatever, whatever. This weekend, by the way, was an example of a decline, drastic decline in patriotic support. It was we had the No Kings March. It was an attempt. This is right here. It was an attempt to say to the president, "We do not support you. We want you out." So that would affect here the support has diminished, and the marches was a demonstration of the diminished support. Okay, so as I said, the political system makes decisions for the environments, the internal environment and the external environment. Last week we went in detail of what the internal environment consist of. Today, I want to do as quick as I can a discussion of the external environment, and so that we can get a whole picture of what politics is all about. So, the internal environment, we have the various systems: the economic system, the demographic system, social system, personality system, biological system. We give a lot of examples of what occurs in these systems and how they impact, what kind of demands they put on the government, and what the government puts output to address the issues that emerge in these internal domestic systems. Where's my cursor? Okay, here we go. Today I want to talk about the external environment, called here, referred to here as extra societal environment. What that just means is that it's what happens outside our nation. This week was a major week of activities that our government was involved in and has been involved in the external environment. If anybody listened to the news, I hope you listened to the news. There was so much that occurred. There was the peace treaty, so-called peace treaty between Israel and Hamas. The hostages were the Hamas hostages or prisoners were released back to Gaza, and the people that were taken hostages, the Israelis that were taken, and some Americans that were taken hostages, were returned. Bodies were supposed to be returned so they can be buried respectfully, and of course, that whole piece, we were at the center, meaning America was at the center of that major global event of trying to achieve peace. Right now, it's kind of falling apart. Okay. There's also an attempt for us to stop the war in the Ukraine between Russia, and we are also in the center of that, also part of the international political system. The last I heard today, the president was supposed to be meeting with Putin to tell him get out of Ukraine and stop fighting. Putin, president of Russia, decided he's not having it. He's not going. So there goes that peace treaty. There's a lot going on in the Caribbean. The boats are being bombed. I hope you all know all of that. Where there's lots of boats in the Caribbean Sea, and our president decided they're drug runners, and he's just killing folks in boats. And so that what else was going on internationally? I'm sure there's a whole lot. But anyway, the external environment consists of four major systems. International political system, a lot, as I said, went on this week in the international political system. Well, not just this week, the last 2 or 3 weeks. There's the international ecological system, which is actually the combined physical environment. There's a lot going on there in terms of pollution and how that affects people's lives. There's the international social system, which consists of groups, NGOs, non-profit organizations. It also consists of terrorist groups. It consists of, for example, international the Catholic Church, which is very, very active globally, etc. And of course, the largest and most important part of the international political system is this fourth element, which is the international economic system. Oh, there's lots that happened this week. Well, not this week, in the last few weeks, where the president has decided to put tariff on everybody he doesn't like, and in so doing, he has announced to the nation that the tariffs is punishing our enemies by making them pay, which, by the way, is totally not true. A tariff is what we pay when they send their goods here. It's a tax we pay, not them. And so that is an area where international economic system has become extremely important. When this graph was made, you could see it's down here in the bottom, and it's down here in the bottom because at the time, we were not as globalized, but now that we're in a very globalized world, as you were in your book review, it's one of the largest, most dynamic aspect of the international system. And so I am just lifting it up from its lowly base and putting it back up here. So having said all of that, the whole purpose of this is that the American political system makes decisions for these entities and all these entities. And by the way, what occurs in these entities also affect the American political system. But what I want to read with you is the fact that all these decisions affect you personally. You may not know, you may not understand, it may not be something that you actually are aware of, but you do. And so part of your educational experience is to determine, and when I say your educational experience, depending on what major you choose, you will now get very deeply into understanding these areas and how these areas affect you. Let me go on to another area, and I want to talk about levels of analysis, which is important when you try to understand decisions that are made by the American political system. So there are five levels of analysis, which is where we look to understand American politics. One is depending on how extensive the impact, it may be a global approach to understanding what is going on. And that is the realization that what happens in a nation may be totally and completely conditioned by outside global factors. Globalization, which is the interconnection of economic systems. If a major economic system suffers global recession or inflation, it's going to impact us. So we may want to understand the global economic picture. If not, you may want to understand regional economic picture. There's some decisions that have a strong regional underpinning. And so, for example, if anything has to do with the Middle East, oh my goodness, it affects the entire region. We can't just isolate one nation and say, okay, let's deal with the problem here. No, the entire region is affected by what occurs in one. And as you can see this week, if you follow the news, after after our president signed the peace treaty between Hamas and Israel, then he went to Egypt and assembled all the Arab states, all the major Arab states, to sign on the treaty, because it can't just be the two of them alone. The whole region have to be in agreement, because the whole region works in concert. So regional dynamics is important when it comes to the Middle East. I'm about to predict that there's going to be a regional response to what's been happening with those boats bombing in the Caribbean. sea, because fishing is very, very an important part of the economy of the Caribbean. And so the president is bombing boats, and not even just declaring that they have drugs. Nobody's investigating. They just see a boat steaming over, it has drugs. And so I believe I can guarantee that the Caribbean nations are going to get together and object. And of course, they do that through the regional organization is called OAS, Organization of American States. That's where they go to raise their voices. National, we need to understand that what a government does may be conditioned totally and completely by internal factors, what's happening on the inside. There's a lot going on right now in the United States with ICE and what else? The immigration issue. That's a national issue. It's not something that can be isolated. And so, but also immigration is also a global issue because if nations are suffering economically, the people are going to come. So it may be a combination of global as well as national factors. Let me continue. Subnational. Subnational includes, for example, different states in the United States. There may be an issue with a state that's driving certain decisions. Um, what else? It could be subnational, could also be regional. For example, the northeast of the United States versus the midwest of the United States. The regional dynamics that condition how those nations react. Uh, what else? Da, 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 da. I'm thinking of what's been happening if you've been following the news, how the governor of California keeps trolling our President Trump. And he can do that because California is a massive state. So he has the wherewithal by virtue of its size to really stand up to the president because it's a large state economically. And finally, individual. And this is usually not something that happens frequently, but it's happening right now. This is where things occurring in the world may be the result of the actions of one person based on that individual and personal needs. And right now, our president is acting individually to make decisions and to act in ways that impact not only all of the United States, but also all of the world. There are nations all over the world who are like, my God, what's going on with this man? And so the only other, if we can think back, it's funny that a person who had another individual who had a major impact on our nation was Hitler. And it's funny how right now there are some groups in the United States that are now saying Hitler was a wonderful person. He killed a few million Jews and put them in the gas chamber. Oh, all of a sudden he's wonderful. And our president, they're saying now, and our president should emulate him, which is a very, very disturbing sentiment. And so what we're doing is we're trying to justify or to sort of sugarcoat individual actions and just say, just mischaracterize actions that were once considered despicable. We're now saying, no, they're wonderful. These are great men. No, they're not. So having said all of that, I want to move on, and I'm going to move on. I think I'm going to just do another I would just, rather than just taping one, I'm going to do it separately. And so I'm going to move on to our next chapter, which now talks about how We talked about the nation making decisions, the whole purpose of government making decisions. Let's see how all of this works. And so I'm going to start off by talking about the various systems because it depends on the kind of system that's in place. And secondly, how does each system, how does our system allow this to occur? So I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop the video and then I'm going to start a separate one.